Thanks for joining me. My name is Mike Gendron. I'm a partner with CFO Insight, and today our session is going to concentrate on people. Now, I want to refresh your memory. We looked at a matrix early in these sessions, and down the left side we had functional areas such as logistics, operations, sales, marketing, and across the top we had people, process, plant, product, and market. Today we're going to focus on people. And we're going to split it into two pieces. Today's session is on inside people, and there will be another session on outside people. The main distinguishing feature, outside people are outside the direct control of your operation. So it might include government agencies, might include vendors, customers, potential vendors. Today we're going to focus on inside folks, that is basically employees. The reason I want to do that is people are probably your single largest expenditure in your P&L. Think about it. Payroll and all the fringe benefits as one line item. If you rolled those together, what would it represent? Most likely the largest single line item in your operation. Now when we talk about people, I'm going to break it into three segments. One is the structure of your organization. Two are the elements within your organization, meaning the people themselves within the organization, and are they doing the jobs expected? And third will be culture. Those three components are what we're going to look at. Now I want to challenge you to think about each of these segments, each segment, as if you were an outsider looking in. Okay? Outsider looking in. One of the things I like to think about in structure is today's structure versus what do you need in 3 years. For example, if you're going to expand geographically across the U.S. or perhaps internationally, do you have the right structure for that? And understand that to do it effectively, to have the right structure effectively, you might have to plan it 1 or 2 years in advance to have the properly trained people within the organization. So does your structure represent what you need to be successful in your strategic plan? Think of that matrix. We're going to talk about the size of your business in 2 or 3 years, the complexity of your business in 2 or 3 years. We're going to talk about the breadth of your organization in 2 or 3 years, perhaps different technologies that you may be involved in 2 or 3 years because of your strategic thinking. And does your structure represent that? So for example, if you're going to migrate to a more technical area, for example, requiring software, do you have the right people in your organization? Do you have the right slots in your organization to accommodate a venture in software? So I want you to think about the structure of your company. We're going to think about geography, we're going to think about size, we're going to think about complexity, we're going to think about technical skills that may be required. So challenge yourself. Do you have the right people? Do you have the right structure in place? Do you have the right structure in place to get to your goals in 3 years? Now, once we've got that framework defined, then the question is, do you have the right people in the slots today? The right people in the slots today. If you're an outsider looking in, what do you see? What do you see? Is Uncle Charlie in the mix? Uncle Charlie, he's the guy that maybe reads the Wall Street Journal for 2 hours a day and then roams around and talks to people. Well, when an outsider sees that, what does he think about the performance of your company? So when you think about the people in the slots, you want to ask yourself the question, will they fulfill the needs of this structure as we grow the business? And then once you decide whether they can or cannot, if they cannot accommodate your requirements over the next 2 or 3 years, is it because they don't have the capability or they don't have the skills and training? So that's a checkpoint. Capability or skills and training. If they don't have the capability, then what do you do with those people? And that's a question you're going to have to deal with, because an outsider will deal with it if they're writing checks for millions of dollars, if they don't have the capabilities. If they do have the capabilities, but they don't have the technical training or experience, do you have time and money available to get them to grow into the positions? So you've got structure. Do you have the right structure? Then you get to the people. Do you have the right people? If they're not the right people, is it because they don't have the capabilities? or they don't have the technical training? And if they do have the capabilities but don't have the technical training, do you have enough time to grow them into the position? So those are checkpoints that we want to think about. When we look at gaps in your requirements, whether it be structural or content, meaning the employees, there are many ways to fill that gap. Perhaps you bring in temporary employees or coaches to bring them up to speed, to get you through critical periods as people grow. There are a lot of solutions. The real key is to identify the gaps in sufficient time so that you can fill those gaps and reach your goals. One question we always deal with, when we're talking about training and changing personnel within an organization and adding people, how much is it going to cost you? And you want to build those into your strategic plan. Now, again, going back to what does a potential buyer see? As a buyer, I look for, are the organizations able to plan effectively and execute the plan? So if you identify structural changes, can you execute to the required change that you're forecasting? If you're talking about people gaps, can you execute a plan to accommodate what you need to achieve your goals? Okay? Now the last point is culture. You're going to have to be very careful in your assessment of culture because in some areas culture change is required and it's not easily done. You may have to bring change agents into your organization to make it happen. Culture is something that might take 2 or 3 years to modify to get you to where you need to be. But this is basically one of the reasons that you do a strategic plan. What kind of a company do you need to be with your inside people, structure, and components? And how long is it going to take you to get there? And if culture change is part of that requirement, think long and hard about how you're going to get there because it will take time. So today we talked about inside people. Our next session we'll talk about people, meaning outside. And that's vendors and customers and outside agencies, perhaps retirees, perhaps communities that you're working in. So see you next session. Thanks for joining me.